played Atari today.
Non grata, and I saw this Atari news today, so had to comment on it before it gets old. But here on TimeExtension.com, it mentions that Atari, which just had its best year in over a decade, says new consoles are on the way. And this comes from the preliminary FY 2025, I guess, point one, revenues and business update for the fiscal year, of course, that ended on March 31st, which it does for most companies out there. And they mentioned that revenues are expected to reach approximately 36 million, of which 29 million comes from games. I guess the other stuff would be, I don't know, licensing deals, t-shirts, merchandise, that sort of stuff, which Atari's relied on a lot, particularly in recent years, where they've been jumping on to the nostalgia from their brand, where there's plenty of people that'll buy an Atari t-shirt even though they don't know much about Atari aside from memes or other than it's old school, that sort of thing. But seeing that it comes from games, that's really good news. For those of us who have been Atarians since birth, if you want to say that, or at least since we were kids back in the 80s, it's, being an Atari fan, it's been like being a sports fan for a team that never wins, or they won once a long, long time ago, and then they lose so often that they become a running joke. And that's where, particularly with the leadership that Atari had before Wade Rosen, it had been extremely frustrating because they kept doing things that was like, what is wrong with you guys? What are you doing? To me, it very much felt like, from the information that I had heard from the inside, you could say, or things that sometimes Atari themselves would say, or their previous CEO, it seemed obvious to me that they were just throwing everything at the wall, seeing what would stick, and hoping that something would work. And that's why they were doing things like casinos in Africa and trying to do TV game shows and all this other crap, the hotels thing, that is just like, this is not what Atari is. It's just trying to turn it into this mega brand like Sony or Microsoft or whatever. I remember having these ridiculous arguments on Atari Age about that, where there's a couple of people who just were like, yeah, Atari is a super strong brand and everything. And it's like, you're living in a different reality if you honestly think that Atari right now, to the perception of the public, has the same sort of power as I mentioned, Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo. Nintendo's really the best one to use in this regard, being a gaming, entertainment focused company. But I literally had those arguments, and it made me bang my head against the wall. But in this story here, it kind of lays out how all these game releases that have been helping kind of bring the brand name back from the ashes, so to speak. And I don't want to use the phrase Atari is back, which they have done so many times. If you search that up, it gets a little bit muddled because they did that so many times over the years. Almost every time they were making a new marketing push, they'd say Atari is back, and it would just become muddled because it wasn't really back. It's like, you shouldn't have to say that if you actually are back to where you should be. It should just be obvious. But that's what I feel like it is now, and I haven't seen them say Atari is back recently. If anybody from Atari is watching this, please refrain from doing that and just keep doing what you're doing. Keep building on that. As it mentions these releases, a lot of these I still need to get around to playing. I just haven't had a chance to yet. That Yars Rising and the Roller Coaster Tycoon games, and the Power Rangers game, and the 7800 plus console, which I did a video on when I got that back for Christmas last year. One thing that I'm surprised by that they don't mention here or in the report, if you click on it, it just downloads a PDF and it's just a 3-page thing, nothing super special, is that they don't mention the arcade push at all. which again surprises me because when so they're working with a company called Allen One. They're based out of here in Utah, and in fact, I'm going to put in video here from Missile Command Recharged Arcade, and this will be the first exclusive showing of this footage. Now, as I'm put on the text here, this is not final. The gameplay will change, but as you can see, anybody who's played Missile Command Recharged knows that this is already different from what's available on consoles. And so this will be coming out pretty soon. I don't know if it'll be ready for June, but definitely by July. So if anybody out there is planning to go to California Extreme in San Jose at the very end of July, then you'll want to show up because there'll be Missile Command Recharged, but there'll be some other things too. I can't, not at liberty to say what yet. But either way, when Allen One announced Missile Command Recharged in January, and they showed off that that very early pre-rendered image of like a big Missile Command arcade, Atari's stock jumped by 30%. And so it's like, again, I'm really surprised that they wouldn't mention that the arcade strategy that they've been doing with the Allen One partnership hasn't been on that radar of the earnings. Granted, I have no idea how much money that's pulled in, and so maybe that's why it's not mentioned, because perhaps that hasn't brought in a ton of money, but it's certainly bringing in or building name recognition for the Atari brand again. Now, to be fair, at this point there's only been one arcade release through Allen One that has the Atari name. That would be the Asteroids Recharged. That started shipping in November 2024. But again, you got Missile Command Recharge coming soon. I know of 2 other games which are also in the works at Allen One based on the Recharge games. Since they haven't been announced yet, I won't say exactly which ones, but they've already said that they're going to turn the different Recharge games into arcade machines. And so I'll just leave you waiting to hear more on that as to which ones they're going to be. But you know, Asteroids Recharge Arcade is out there at some places, and again, that's, I think, helping rebuild the Atari name. And there's some other potential cool stuff that can come from that partnership too. I don't think it'll be limited just to the Recharge games, but I can't say anything to that because I haven't heard anything. That's just my assumption, is that, you know, if Atari's happy with what Allen One has done, and Allen One, I think, is pretty happy with their Atari relationship, that, you know, you could see more in the future. But anyways, kind of getting off track there. So the real question of this whole article is, you know, there's going to be new consoles on the way. Obviously, those would be part of the Atari Plus platform series. And now I did a video not super long ago saying that the Jaguar Plus, because I can't remember where I'd read, but Atari had already indicated that they were interested in doing more of the Plus platform series, but they didn't say exactly what it is that they were going to do in that regard. I mean, we've already had the Atari 400, which in my view pretty much covers the Atari 5200 as well. I don't know what the purpose would be in doing an Atari 5200 Plus. I mean, I know there's some 5200 fans out there. I have a 5200 and a bunch of games, but I've been kind of going back and forth. And it's like, maybe I should sell my collection there because I never play the thing. Because I mean, maybe I need to get a mod for my 5200 so I can plug it into a modern display. But setting it up on my old CRT is kind of a pain in the butt because I only have the RF adapter. And the only games that I really play on it, if I do pull it out anyways, would be Space Dungeon and Adventure 2. But there's ports of those on the Atari XEGS. Anyways, now maybe they could do an XEGS Plus, but that would just feel like a retread of the Atari 400. And of course, they already have the Atari 2600 Plus and the 7800 Plus, which really are just the same thing, really, with different shells. Now, maybe that is where they would decide to do an XEGS Plus or a 5200 Plus, and then so it would play the, you know, the Atari 400 stuff, 800 stuff, as well as maybe 5200 cartridges or something. But again, just since that was a bit of a failed platform, I don't know. I mean, both the XEGS and the 5200 weren't successes, and they didn't get the same sort of public recognition that the 400 had. And so it's like, what else do they have in there? Obviously, as an Atari Jaguar fan, I would love to see that, and I assume that at some point they will do a Jaguar Plus. And again, if somebody from Atari is watching this, especially at this point, as I mentioned, I would highly, highly, highly like to see the Nuon platform included into the emulation with the Jaguar box, since the Nuon is in essence the Jaguar 1.5 or the Jaguar 2, because the same designer for the Jaguar worked on the Nuon, and it was basically a bunch of ex-Atari guys when Atari collapsed in '96 that went on to make a company called VM Labs, and they came up with the Nuon technology. But it's like, do I still have interest in the other Plus platforms? Sure, absolutely. If they do an ST Plus, wouldn't mind that, as I did a video on the ST not long ago. Granted, I would love that to include support for the ST, the STE, the TT, and the Falcon. To me, the Falcon is one of Atari's platforms that's got the short end of the stick, just because there was almost nothing released for it as far as games go. Back in the day, it's like less than 30 games. But it was a pretty powerful platform, particularly with 3D stuff, at least if you believe the demos that are out there. There's all sorts of tech demos for the Falcon, and they look really cool. They look almost like PlayStation 1 quality stuff, but tech demo doesn't mean the same thing as a game. And of course, with the Jaguar Plus, obviously that would be using Digital Eclipse's Jaguar emulator, the Big P EMU, and I mean, it would be cool to have like a turbo mode that could take advantage of running that emulator at the faster speeds. Sure, it's not the original Jaguar stuff, but it'd be kind of cool to have some like specialized Jaguar Plus games that could take advantage of that, and that would be another reason why to include Nuon on there. The Lynx Plus would be really cool as well, because, I mean, the Lynx was a fantastic platform. I have 3 Atari Lynxes sitting around and a ton of cartridges, and it'd be great to see that also get some love. But one thing that I thought of before I end on this is that what they could also be doing is the Intellivision Plus. Since they bought the Mattel Intellivision rights and a bunch of IP to that, it would make total sense for them to do an Intellivision Plus platform. Now, comment below as to which one you think they're going to go with next. I mean, I assume that if all of these Plus platforms are big successes, then eventually they'll release all of these that I've mentioned. It's just a question of which one's going to be next, and which one is likely going to render the most out of the effort. Of course, one thing that excites me about the prospects on any of these is Atari developing new content for these things, just like they've done with the 7800 Plus and the 2600 Plus. They've released brand new Atari 2600 cartridges, brand new 7800 cartridges. We have Tiger Heli coming soon, and that's really cool to me. The prospect of doing that, as I mean, that really means that the Atari 2600 has the longest lifespan out of any console that's ever been released, because you do have official cartridges being made for it, almost 50 years after the machine was originally released. And Nintendo's, while they have the the eShop stuff and the NES Online, SNES Online, that's not the same thing as producing actual physical cartridges and doing new releases on that. They haven't done that. And so, yeah, it's a cool thing. And so it's like, what other new Jaguar games or Lynx games or ST Falcon games could come along? Maybe some really cool stuff. But anyways, this has been a long one, so let me know what you think about that in the comments below, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.